As I mentioned yesterday, we're now going to be in the New Testament for a little while. We've looked at a lot of the Old Testament, went through Jeremiah, went through Ezekiel, we went through some of the other prophets, and so we've been in the Old Testament for a while. If I'm not wrong, it's been since Easter, I think, since the end of the Easter season. Remember, during the Easter season, our first reading is from the Acts of the Apostles, and I think we've been in the New Testament, the Old Testament since then, which would be since June. I'd have to look it up, but off the top of my head, that's what I think. So we've been in the Old Testament for quite a while, and I always say, and we found that out, that things, teachings in the Old Testament connect with the New Testament in many ways. I have a habit of doing things, some of the language I use, things in the Old Testament, or let's look at some stuff. It's another word I use all the time, and I try to get not to, but after 68 years of saying stuff, I guess it's not going to stop. In any case, so now we're going to be in the New Testament. We're going to be in the letters of Paul for a while. Remember what I told you yesterday. If someone said who wrote whatever letter in the New Testament, you have a 75% chance of getting it right if you say Paul. But the others are pretty obvious. Because the others are, you have today we're going to look at the second letter of Paul to the Thessalonians. Well, technically we call that Second Thessalonians. Okay, Second Thessalonians. And then Romans, and then First Corinthians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when you get to the other letters, except for Revelation, they all have the name of the author. Who wrote the first letter of Peter? Peter? Very good. You get that right. Well, now we're looking at Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians. We're gonna look at something really interesting in light of some of the events going on today. And I'm not talking about eschatological ideas, which means study of the end of the world. I'm talking about something else, and we'll show you what I mean. So let's go to our Catholic public domain version. We're going to go to chapter 2 of 2 Thessalonians, and we're going to look at what's being said here. We're going to be, this is another one that jumps around. So we're going to be looking at 2:1 through 3, and then 14 through 17. So we're looking at 6 verses, 2 different places. So let's start. But we ask you, brothers, concerning the advent of our Lord Jesus Christ and of our gathering to him, that you not be readily disturbed or terrified in your minds by any spirit or word or epistle supposedly sent from us, claiming that the day of the Lord is close by. Let no one deceive you in any way, for this cannot be unless the apostasy will have arrived first, and the man of sin will have been revealed, the son of perdition. Okay, so that's the first part, and then we're going to go to the second part, where we're definitely going to come back to that part there. And so now we're going to go to 14 through 17. And so, brothers, stand firm, hold to the traditions that you have learned, whether by word or by epistle. So may our Lord Jesus Christ himself and God our Father, who has loved us and has given us an everlasting consolation in good hope and grace, exhort your hearts and confirm you in every good word and deed. Well, let's go to the first part. So what we're talking about is people are getting upset because people are coming in and teaching things that are upsetting people about the day of the Lord is coming by. Okay, we look a lot into that in Advent. And actually towards the end of the liturgical year, we've talked about that before. Well, let's be straightforward. A lot of that happens today. And what does St. Paul say? Do not be readily disturbed or terrified in your minds by any spirit or word or epistle supposedly sent from us, claiming that the day of the Lord is close by. Don't. Well, let's change that. Don't be readily disturbed or terrified in your minds by any spirit or word or epistle that says something that is not church teaching. I was looking at Reddit the other day, the Catholicism forum on Reddit, and there was someone who wrote there that Father Chad Ripperger basically implies, because he talks about this is what the saints say, that most people are going to hell. Okay. That is not church teaching, by the way. The church doesn't know who goes to heaven, who goes to hell. So this whole idea that, the majority of people are going to hell, you've heard the story. I know a man who went to heaven and he came back and said, out of all the people in our town, only 3 people made it to heaven. Right. None of that is church teaching. None of it. Zip. Zero. So when people hear that, it upsets them, as did upset the writer there. It upsets them, yet this is the exact same principle. Why are you listening to this? This doesn't come from the church. It's not church teaching. Yeah, as Father Ripperger says, most of the saints say that. That's personal revelation. It doesn't make any difference. That is not church teaching, and it's not in the official maybe isn't the right word, but not in the official, authentic teaching of the Catholic Church. It's called personal revelation. You never have to listen to any personal revelation. You never have to obey, well, Saint so-and-so said that he or she went to heaven and saw Jesus, and Jesus said that I'm going to hell. That's personal revelation. It doesn't make any difference. It's not church teaching. And that's an important distinction, because St. John Chrysostom said, and this is not personal revelation, this is a teaching, that if God reveals something to you and you are positive this is from God, ignore it, because there's always a chance of deception. So, and if it is from God, it'll come true. So this is a fascinating thing, and we see that happening all the time with these online influencers. I talked to you yesterday what the Archbishop of Detroit said, and I actually passed that column off to our chancery here in the Archdiocese. Powerful stuff. I use the word again. Powerful material to understand. You have to be discerning. Now, I discovered something because I mentioned Father Chad Ripperger, and I'm going to tell you right now, I do not recommend Father Chad Ripperger. I'm just going to tell you right now. Oh, but everyone listens to him. He's really great. I don't recommend him for exactly that reason. He gets information from demons. I mean, I'm not saying telling tales out of school. He does. He makes that very open, and he says this, that, and he comes with all these teachings, and some of these teachings are not magisterial teachings. I'm sorry, they are not. And all that. I don't recommend him, but now there's an addition complication, and something I should say about Father Chad Ripperger. I say I don't recommend a lot of what he teaches. It's not official magisterial teaching. I mean, he can say Saint so-and-so, and I Saint so-and-so said, X, Y, and Z. Well, that's not official magisterial teaching. Magisterial teaching is in the official magisterial documents. Okay. So that's not official magisterial teaching. But now I found out that there are channels dedicated to creating his, we're going to put quotes, the word in quotes, teachings, because they're not from him, but they make it look like and sound like, and I'm telling you, exactly like him, making teachings that's not him. So that's even more complicated. And again, the thing to keep in mind is, and people get upset about this, and Father Chad Ripperger says that saints say that most people are going to hell. It's not church teaching. He may have said that, which he may have actually said that, and saints may have actually said that, but that's not part of what the church actually teaches. Reminds me of I was at and that goes for all of them. All of them. Anyone who says, well, according to Saint so-and-so, most people go to hell. Fine. You can listen to Saint so-and-so, but that's not official magisterial teaching. Okay. So now we go to, something. It was at a wake for, it wasn't Catholic. It was a young person who had died. And one of the the youth ministers of a local non-Catholic church came up and says they had a survey and they found out that most youth go to hell. Who does that survey? How did you do that survey? You would have to survey people in hell to find out how old they are. It doesn't make any sense. And he just came and said that. Well, that's not church teaching. And it's understood. And this is what St. Paul is talking about. And in his case, he's dealing with the same thing I just described, which complicates the whole issue that I was just talking about with Father Chad Ripperger. People are inventing his words, making it sound like, using AI, making it sound like it's really him, and it's not, which is even more complicated. And so therefore, when you hear that, and you hear these teachings, and you hear people say that most people are going to hell, and you do that and all the other thing, that's not church teaching. And that's the same principle that St. Paul is talking about here. People are speaking as if they are speaking for the church, and they are not. They are upsetting you. Why? You shouldn't be listening to them in the first place. So that's an important consideration. And that goes for all of them. One of the questions, when you hear something that upsets you, you say, is that church teaching? You know, Father so-and-so said that I'm going to hell because whatever. Is that church teaching? You have to look it up. Or Father so-and-so, I'm going to heaven even though I just murdered 17 people. Well, is that church teaching? You have to look that up. Or ask someone or do a little study. And this is an important issue because it happens even today that people are listening to stuff and getting all worried about it and everything else, and it's not church teaching. You know, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is, do you ever deal with people in court? And in court, they make this tiny decisions, or make these decisions based on maybe a syllable or a word, or did the person really intend to do this? And these are all the questions they ask in church. And these are intensely legal questions that are studied in order to determine either guilt or innocence or culpability, whatever the case may be. People are told that they have to make those decisions in regards to their eternal life. And they get very worried and upset, and they're worried about, am I in mortal sin, and can I receive the Eucharist, and all the other stuff. When these kind of discussions are studied intensely just to find out the exact meaning. And I think that's a too heavy burden for people. I always tell people, if you are questioning whether you are in mortal sin, you're not. It's an important question. When in doubt, cross it out, as one bishop told me. We're going to be back on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We're here every single Monday through Friday. We'll be right back right after this. Have you ever wanted to read the Bible but didn't know which readings to check out? Well, how about looking at the Church's daily readings? You can find them at the website of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Just go to bible.usccb.org and click on the date that pops up on that page. There are other options on that page as well. That is bible.usccb.org, and click on the date and you will see the daily readings for your own prayer and study of the Bible. This is a prayerful tip from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. If you're looking for a way to contact the show, there are two ways to do it. You can do it by phone and contact our listener line. Telephone number is 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. You can also email the show at producer@catholicAudiomedia.com. That's producer@catholicAudiomedia.com. Those are two ways to contact the show, and feel free to do that. So again, that's 617-297-7452. You can leave a message on our listener line or send us an email at producer@catholicAudiomedia.com. So we're back, and one of the things I wanted to discuss in light of some of the issues going on today, which is a lot of times why I like to take the focus I like to do in the second half of the show, is something I heard yesterday, and I found it, it's one of those things you have to say, no, you got this completely wrong. Now, I don't believe in stealing. Stealing is wrong. It's a sin. And I'm the first will tell you that if you know someone who steals and they even can justify it, they're still a thief. And the more you steal, the more your heart becomes a heart rooted in thievery. So you don't want to steal. These are important things. So why am I telling you this? Well, there was a story. I was listening to Katz and Crosby recently, and they had a story, the discussion about, I guess they want to, in New York, maybe New York City, to not prosecute any stealing under $1,000. And they're saying these people are very poor and, they're coming in, they're stealing things because they can't afford to buy them. Now, you can take that however you want, whether you believe it or not, the whole bit. And as they said, well, some of these people steal them and then sell them on the black market, and that's how they make money. And that's true. That happens. Or they'll come in looking for something to say, gee, could you get me some? This is one that some guy actually had me convinced for years because I said it was such a bizarre connection. How could this guy be lying? And he was always looking for Infamil in diapers. Now, probably what he was doing is we would give him Infamil in diapers, and then he'd sell them on the black market. Because we checked. One time I talked to another priest. I said, you ever heard of this guy? He says, yeah. He says, that kid must be in college by now. He says, he's been doing that for years. Well, so, I mean, there are scams. There are that. But as one of the guys on Katz and Crosby, and I think I know who it is, but since I don't know specifically because it's radio and they didn't say this is what so-and-so said, he said, well, I want a Bugatti, so I'm just going to go steal a Bugatti. Wait. There is a heck of a difference between, now, both are stealing, so I'm not agreeing to this. There's a heck of a difference between stealing toothpaste and stealing a Bugatti. Or a Mercedes-Benz, or whatever the case may be. There's a huge difference between the two. And one of the reasons is that toothpaste is important. It is a necessary item for personal hygiene, and a Bugatti is not. And they miss the principle. The principle is that and this is true, there are people who have trouble affording these things. And the solution is not to allow them to steal, because ultimately that doesn't work out. But there must be another solution that says, let's find out what we can do. Let's find a way that we can help people without getting them to steal. Because if you encourage them to steal, then they become thieves. And even though you're helping them, you're just encouraging them to steal, well, then that turns into the sinful pattern of stealing. So that's not going to work either. But it's interesting because you have to understand, well, you don't have to do anything, but you understand that there are people that have great needs of basic human needs that cannot afford them, and there are different ways. There are different charities that may help out. There are parishes, and St. Anthony Parish, during Lent, they collect like travel-sized toothpaste and toothbrushes and all these things that they then donate. And I think they've gotten up to over 500 little bags. They put them in these little Ziploc bags. I don't know, is Ziploc a registered trademark? Those little, those connections. You always have to be careful of that. But anyway, they bring them to the Pine Street Inn or one of the other, or St. Francis House, Pine Street Inn, or whatever, so that people can get these needs that they cannot afford to get. And so that's one solution. But this whole idea of, well, if we let them steal toothpaste, we might as well let them steal a fancy car, that misses the point exactly, intensely. It just misses the point. And this is a real issue that people have got to understand. Because one of the things that, remember what I told you what Bill O'Reilly said? Bill O'Reilly said the problem, or no, he didn't say the problem. He just said capitalism has winners and losers. That's just the way it is. And people will tell you that with capitalism has winners and losers. Well, you better work to be a winner and not to be a loser. But he says that's the nature of capitalism. And in that light, we as people of faith are actually called to help those who fall through the cracks in capitalism. That's one of the mandates that Jesus gave to us. Now, that doesn't mean to allow people to steal. That doesn't mean to allow people to walk into the local drugstore or whatever and take whatever hygiene supplies they want and wish them a good day. That's not going to work because that affects the ability of the store to operate. I forget where it is. There's some location where that was very common, and now all the stores have pulled out of that area, and that's an issue. There was an article recently, I forget where it was. Gee, I should make a note of all these things. That there were no supermarkets in one neighborhood because they just pulled out. If they're not profitable, they're going to pull out. So it's something that we as Catholics may have to look for a solution to find an idea, but it's not just to turn around and dismiss them and say, well, yeah. And of course, I told you that one of the solutions is to have a drive of all these things. One of the things the homeless need a lot is socks. I was told that a long time ago. Socks. They need that really a lot if you want to drop socks off to some of the homeless shelters. So anyway, that's one of the things. Don't get caught up, or, we can't get caught up in making stupid arguments. And that was a really stupid argument. Oh, if we allow people to steal, I want to steal a fancy car, so why don't I steal a fancy car? No, that's a stupid argument. That doesn't make any sense. And it really shows a lack of sensitivity to and understanding of the real issue. The real issue can bring us down to what is it that Jesus say? When I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. We don't want to set people up to have to steal, and we don't want to encourage stealing, but we do want to come up with a solution. Now, if you remember my interview a long time ago with Scott Schaefer Duffy, one of my favorite interviews, said that they actually allow people to steal food from from the Catholic Worker House because they know the people need it. And people say, they're stealing food. Yep, we know. Yeah, we allow it. Because he knows they need it. And that might be not a solution that people particularly care for. And I'm not offering that as a solution. But you see what I'm saying? The idea of, we can't let them do that. Well, wait a minute, let's solve the need. That was very Franciscan. That's one thing St. Francis did. Let's solve the need. Let's figure out how to solve this problem instead of just dismissing people like that. So thought I'd let you know. In any case, we're going to be back on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Did you know that Catholic TV offers free apps for both Android and iOS users? Visit the website catholictv.com or your app store to download this faith resource to your device. If you're looking for a way to contact the show, there are two ways to do it. You can do it by phone and contact our listener line. Telephone number is 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. You can also email the show at producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. That's producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. Those are two ways to contact the show, and feel free to do that. So again, that's 617-297-7452. You can leave a message on our listener line or send us an email at producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. We're going to continue in 2 Thessalonians tomorrow. Going to be an interesting passage, and we're going to discuss pretty much having to do with what I was just talking about. And so we'll look at that tomorrow. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed day. Remember, we're here every single Monday through Friday. And also, pass the word, subscribe, let people know that you have this program here. And we've been developing this over, it's got to be, got to be close to 6-7 years, either on the radio or on the podcast. And some people are surprised that there are 5 half-hour shows, almost half-hour shows a week. Yes, in fact, there are. We'll be back tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day.
Yeah, you know the real is back. Father Carr Chaplain from the city of champions, dropping daily reflections coming straight from the field. The raw truth revealed for the strong-willed. It's the Greatest Act of Defiance podcast with your host, Father Carr, a message built to last. The Greatest Act of Defiance podcast. That's right, the Greatest Act of Defiance. Word up. Word up. Word up. Word up.
The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution. The logo used in promotion and also the rap that ends our program are AI. No other form of the program in any way, shape, or form is used with AI or using AI.